welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hey.
And a special shout out to all our listeners out there, especially those tuning in from Lagos.
Lagos.
Yeah, you know why.
Why?
This episode is brought to you by Enough Realty Limited.
Ah, okay.
They're the folks connecting you to Lagos's top-tier realtors.
Very cool. So are we diving into the Lagos market today?
We are going to be talking about the Nigerian real estate market broadly, but with a special focus on Lagos today. We're diving into a report all about 2025 predictions.
Ooh, predictions. Always a fun topic.
Yeah, so imagine this, right? Like a treasure map, but for real estate,
Okay, I like where this is going.
leading to, those golden opportunities. But there's a twist. Some hidden traps along the way.
Oh, there's always a catch, isn't there?
Always. That's what we're going to uncover today, those opportunities and those traps.
Sounds like a wild ride.
It's going to be a wild ride, so buckle up, folks. This is one treasure hunt you won't want to miss.
All right, let's get into it. What does this treasure map tell us about the market overall?
Okay, so first things first, this market's projected to hit a whopping 2.61 trillion US dollars
Trillion.
by 2025.
That's a lot of zeros.
It is a lot of zeros.
So where's all that money concentrated? What's driving this growth?
Residential real estate. That's the big one.
Makes sense. Everyone needs a place to live, right?
Everyone needs a roof. Exactly. And we're talking about an estimated 2.25 trillion US dollars just in that sector alone.
Wow. So what's fueling this boom in residential real estate?
Two big things. One, urbanization. People are flocking to cities.
Makes sense. More opportunities, more excitement.
Right. And two, the population just keeps on growing. More people, more demand for housing. Simple supply and demand, right?
Absolutely. So if I'm an investor, this sounds like a pretty sweet deal. High demand, huge potential market. Where do I sign up?
Hold your horses. Remember those traps we talked about?
Oh, yeah, the catch. There's always a catch.
We got to talk about the housing shortage.
Oh, right. I was reading about that. Demand is through the roof, but supply just can't keep up, can it?
Exactly. It's growing, sure, but at a much slower pace, like 5% annually.
So we've got this huge gap between what people need and what's actually available.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get interesting and a little tricky.
Okay, so let's break down this housing shortage. What's causing it?
Well, remember the fuel subsidy removal a while back?
Oh, yeah, that was a big deal.
Huge. It hit the construction industry hard.
Right, because fuel costs impact, well, everything. Transporting materials, running equipment.
Everything. It's a chain reaction. Costs go up for developers, and guess what?
Those costs trickle down to the buyers.
Bingo.
Ouch. So we're not just talking about a small price bump here, right? This report mentions some pretty drastic increases.
Oh, yeah, it's not pretty. Cement prices doubled. Imagine that.
Yeah.
A bag of cement that was 4,000 euro, now it's 8,800.
Oh, that's a big jump. What about other building materials?
Basic blocks, up over 100%. They used to be 250 each, now over 550.
Wow, and I bet iron rods aren't far behind.
Nope, those prices are climbing too. It's a tough time to be a developer in Nigeria right now, and, that pain gets passed down the line to buyers.
Right, because developers have to make a profit, so this construction cost surge, it's got to be impacting affordability in a major way.
It is. And on top of that, we've got inflation running wild, 33%.
33%. So just to give our listeners a real-world example, imagine that loaf of bread you bought last year for $100.
This year, same loaf, now you're paying 133.
Ouch. Inflation just eats away at your purchasing power, doesn't it?
It does. And then to add insult to injury, we've got interest rates hovering around 15%.
15%. That's rough.
It's a triple whammy for anyone trying to enter the market, especially those with, lower or middle incomes. Affordability is becoming a major, major concern.
It's a real challenge. It sounds like the market is booming, but is it becoming out of reach for many Nigerians?
That's the big question, isn't it?
So what's being done to tackle this affordability crisis? Is anyone trying to bridge that gap?
Well, the government stepped in with this ambitious plan.
Okay, tell me more.
It's called the Renewed Hope Cities and Estates Program. The goal, over 20,000 new housing units every year. And they've already got 10,112 under construction.
Across how many sites?
14.
Okay, that's a start. 20,000 units sounds like a lot, but is it enough to really make a dent in that huge housing demand we talked about?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Oh, wow.
And, whenever the government gets involved in something this big.
There are always potential downsides, unintended consequences.
Exactly. We got to keep a close eye on how this program plays out. It's a step in the right direction, but it might not be the whole solution.
All right, fair enough. So let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about the big picture, but what about Lagos specifically? It's the heart of Nigeria's real estate scene, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a magnet for investors, but that comes with a price tag, literally.
Right. Lagos has a reputation for being expensive. What's the situation looking like in 2025?
Well, it's kind of tale of two cities,
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
On one hand, you've got those ultra-luxury developments popping up in places like Ikoyi, Victoria Island. Think high-rises with stunning views catering to the high rollers.
Ah, the glamorous side of Lagos.
Exactly. But then on the other hand, you've got this huge demand for affordable options, and that's pushing people towards the suburbs, places like Ibujuleki, Ipe.
So it's like two different worlds within the same city, but with prices rising everywhere, how affordable are those suburban options really?
Well, the average price increase across Lagos is about 15%. But here's the kicker. In those desirable urban centers, rents could jump anywhere from 10% to a whopping 30%.
10 to 30%. That's insane. So even the suburbs might not be a safe haven for affordability seekers.
It's a tough market out there. And that's just Lagos. There's a whole lot more to explore in the rest of Nigeria, places where the dynamics are totally different. Abuja, Port Harcourt, they've got their own stories to tell.
I'm intrigued. Let's delve into those other regions. I'm curious to see what opportunities lie beyond the hustle and bustle of Lagos.
We will, but first, a quick break. We'll be right back with more on Nigeria's real estate roller coaster. Stay tuned.
So let's talk about those other regions. You mentioned Abuja and Port Harcourt. How do they compare to Lagos in terms of real estate?
Well, they each have their own, unique vibe.
Okay, so what's the vibe in Abuja?
Abuja, it's the capital, right? So it attracts a different crowd, more political, administrative folks.
Right, so the real estate scene there probably caters to that crowd.
Exactly. You see a lot of luxury developments, mixed-use projects, things like that. It's a bit more, I don't know, refined.
Okay, interesting. And what about Port Harcourt? That's the oil and gas hub, right?
Yeah, Port Harcourt is all about oil and gas. It's a
Yeah.
major industrial center, so you see more of a focus on commercial properties, industrial spaces, things that support those big industries.
Gotcha. So different cities, different vibes, different types of real estate opportunities. But what about affordability? Are there any areas in Nigeria that are, a bit easier on the wallet?
Well, we talked about those suburban areas in Lagos, like Ibejuleki and Ipe. They're still relatively affordable, especially compared to the city center.
Right, right. And they're attracting a lot of attention because of those big infrastructure projects happening there.
Exactly. The Dangote refinery, the Lekki Deep Seaport, even that proposed international airport, those are game changers. They're creating jobs, bringing in people, and driving demand for housing.
So if you're looking for long-term growth potential, those areas seem like a smart bet.
They do. But I got to admit, those high-end districts in Lagos, those are tempting too.
Oh yeah, Ikoyi, Victoria Island. Those places have a certain allure, don't they?
It's the luxury lifestyle. Those sky-high returns on short-let properties.
It's
Hard to resist.
Yeah, it is. So how do you choose? Suburbs versus urban centers. Long-term growth versus quick returns.
It really comes down to your individual investment goals and how much risk you're comfortable with.
Right. If you're a risk taker, those urban centers might be your playground. But if you prefer a slower, steadier approach, those suburbs offer a more balanced option.
Exactly. It's all about finding that right fit, that sweet spot for your strategy. And hey, let's not forget those other cities, those hidden gems we talked about. Ibadan, Abeokuta, Kano.
Yeah, yes, the second-tier cities. They're often overlooked, but they offer some great potential too.
They do. Lower entry costs, solid returns, and they're benefiting from all those improvements in infrastructure and a growing middle class.
It's like getting in on the ground floor before things really take off.
Exactly. But hey, no matter where you're looking to invest, one thing remains the same, that due diligence is key. Remember what we talked about, building permits.
Oh, yeah, those are crucial.
Skipping that step can cost you big time. We're talking demolitions if your property doesn't meet the code.
That's a nightmare scenario for any investor. Imagine pouring all your money into a property only to have it bulldozed.
Exactly. Always make sure you've got all the necessary approvals. Check with the Ministry of Physical Planning, make sure everything's above board.
Okay, noted. Permits. Check. What else should investors be watching out for?
Well, we can't forget about those rising rent defaults.
Oh, yeah. That was another big red flag in the report.
It was.
Yeah.
And with the economy the way it is, it's more important than ever to screen your tenants carefully.
So what does thorough tenant screening look like?
It's all about doing your homework, verifying income, checking employment history, credit scores.
And talking to references, right?
Absolutely. Don't skip that step. You want to paint a complete picture of who you're renting to. You're trusting them with your property. after all.
It's like a job interview for your tenants.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And speaking of preventing problems, having a really solid lease agreement is crucial too.
Ah, yes, the legal side of things. That can be tricky.
It can. That's why it's important to have everything spelled out clearly. Payment deadlines, late fees, what happens if someone defaults.
Think of it as a roadmap for a successful landlord-tenant relationship.
Exactly. Lay out the ground rules right from the start, and you'll avoid a lot of headaches down the road. And hey, if you're not sure about the legal stuff, don't be afraid to get a lawyer involved.
Always good advice. It's better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to legal matters. It's amazing how much technology has changed the real estate game. This report highlighted the rise of proptech. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, proptech. It's like having a digital toolbox for managing your properties.
I like that analogy. So what kind of tools are we talking about?
Think about it. You've got platforms that connect landlords and tenants online, making the whole leasing process way smoother.
Okay, so that's finding tenants. What about managing the property itself?
There's software for that too.
Hmm.
You could handle everything: rent collection, maintenance requests, even generating financial reports.
Wow, that's pretty comprehensive.
It is. It takes so much of that administrative burden off your shoulders.
So proptech is making things easier for both landlords and tenants.
Absolutely. And for those who might be hesitant about, diving into the real estate market, technology is making it a lot less daunting.
It's like lowering the barrier to entry. You don't need to be a seasoned pro to get started anymore.
Exactly. So whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, PropTech can help you level up your game.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground market trends, regional dynamics, due diligence, the role of technology. But before we wrap things up, I want to go back to something we touched on earlier, the human side of all this.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the numbers and forget that real people are affected by these market shifts.
Exactly. This report gave us some valuable data, but it didn't really delve into the individual stories, the human experiences behind those numbers.
Think about it. Every real estate transaction, every new development, there are people behind those decisions, people with their own hopes and dreams.
Imagine that family searching for an affordable place to live, that young entrepreneur trying to get their business off the ground, that retiree looking to downsize.
They're all part of this bigger picture.
And their stories, their experiences, they're just as important as the market trends themselves.
It's a good reminder that the real estate market isn't just about bricks and mortar, It's about people's lives.
Absolutely. It's about understanding that those numbers on a page represent real people, real families, real dreams.
Well said. And with that in mind, let's take a moment to reflect on those human stories, those individual journeys that are shaping the future of Nigerian real estate. We'll be right back with our final thoughts and key takeaways. Okay, so we've talked about the big trends, those regional differences, the risks, the opportunities. It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot.
So, for our listeners out there, what's the key takeaway? What should they really remember from all of this?
Well, I think the main thing is the Nigerian real estate market, it's like this powerful engine, huge potential, but it needs a skilled driver.
You can't just jump in blindly.
No, definitely not. You got to know what you're doing. You need to do your research, understand the risks, and maybe, get some advice from the experts.
Speaking of research, you've talked about due diligence a lot today. Can you remind us again why it's so important?
Sure, it's not just about finding a property you like. It's about really digging deep.
Like a detective?
Yeah, exactly. You got to check those permits, screen your tenants, make sure you understand all the legal details.
So you don't fall into one of those traps.
Exactly. In a market this hot, you can't afford to cut corners. It's not just about making money. It's about protecting your investment, too.
And thinking long term.
Right. You got to be thinking a few steps ahead.
And, we can't forget about those regional differences we talked about.
Oh, absolutely. Nigeria is a big country. Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. They all have their own personalities.
What works in one place might not work in another.
Exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all market. You got to tailor your strategy to the specific region, the type of property.
Know your audience.
Exactly. You got to understand the local trends, the rules, even the culture.
It's like learning a whole new language.
It is, in a way. You got to become a student of that market.
Yeah, you got to do your homework.
Yeah.
And, it's not just about the location. Things are always changing, right? Government policies, infrastructure, the economy. It's a moving target.
It is. You got to stay informed and be ready to adjust your strategy. Flexibility is key.
So it's not just about knowledge. It's about being able to adapt to roll with the punches.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
fast-paced market. You got to be able to keep up.
But, for those who are willing to put in the work, who are ready to learn and adapt,
The rewards can be huge.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it's not just about the money. It's about being part of something bigger.
Investing in Nigeria's future.
Exactly. The real estate sector is a key part of the country's growth. So by making smart, responsible investments.
You're contributing to that growth.
Exactly. And that's something to be proud of. So to wrap things up for our listeners, the Nigerian real estate market in 2025. It's exciting, it's full of potential, but it's not a walk in the park.
It's a challenge.
It is, but a rewarding one. Do your research, stay informed, be flexible. And remember, behind all the numbers, behind every property, there are real people, real stories. And that's what makes this market so fascinating.
It's more than just bricks and mortar. It's about people's lives.
Well said. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Nigerian real estate. We hope you've gained some valuable insights. And hey, a special shout out to our friends at Enough Realty Limited. If you're looking for expert guidance in Lagos, they're the ones to call. They'll connect you with the best realtors in the city. So until next time, happy investing.